Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think it is about intentions. And just as like with organizational psychology, one of the things that we found is that diversity changes, like the intentionality behind diversity. And so for a very long time, you had affirmative action and you had all of these goals that were related to making sure that the minority, which was Black Americans, were not um, discriminated against. And so you see less of that. And the reason that you saw so many Black women, I think, when we were coming up is because there were more Black women who were going to college, who were going into the different fields. And so you just kind of saw that it was easier to advance us. And I think that was just a situation that's another um, cross that Black men have to carry. But that's the issue now, is that the diversity has moved more towards the LGBTQ, IA, and so many other. They're bringing over Africans have come in more. So even on the HBCU campus, you see more Africans who are in those roles as professors. And so our Black American children, and I'm one of the people who, for reparations, so I'm always going to take it back to Black Americans in terms of Blacks who are descendants of enslaved people in America. You know, the things that were set up for us, we don't have access to anymore, because you have a lot of immigrant and first generation immigrant children coming over, and they're getting access to those scholarships, they're getting those diversity roles. And so you, even if you do see a Black face, you may not have someone who understands where you're coming from, who may not understand that, yes, you've been here for 5, 6, 7 generations, but you have been climbing up out of Jim Crow and all these other things. So there are so many different reasons that we're in the place that we're in now. And our companies don't really have the scope to deal with one issue at it. They only do one issue at a time. So it's like, okay, we need to pivot and we need to get more LGBTQ. So you're no longer a priority. Versus us saying, who is perfect for this job? And being able to stand on that. And I think that's all we're asking for. If I show up and my credentials are where they're supposed to be, pick me. And so I think that's another layer to that, is that we're just in a very different time in terms of our history, and that has impacted what we see, what the corporate landscape looks like.
That's good. And I think it's interesting how everyone seems to be in agreement that things have kind of gotten a little bit more difficult for us as women. But yet most corporate organizations today have these DEI programs. There's not many that don't, and DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so then the question becomes, so what's the point of having these programs, these officers, to kind of be the face for diversity if internally we're not going to reap the benefits?
Right. Because DEI doesn't mean you're changing someone's heart.
It does not.
And it doesn't mean that you are being intentional. It just means that you're giving people more information. And they can listen to it or not listen to it. You don't put any policies in place to force application. You're just saying you got to sit in this room and listen.
And I think you're right, Dawn. I think I actually have a couple of people in my circle who are in that space. And I see on LinkedIn a lot people who are now in those roles, and they say it's tough. And I think part of the reason why it's tough is, to Wakita's point, the scope of diversity has changed. It's no longer primarily African Americans trying to create a space for us. You have all of these other different ethnicities, and as you mentioned, communities who now we have to be inclusive of all of that. And so have we kind of gone to the bottom on the agenda? And I think that's what I hear us saying.
God me, O great Jehovah, pilgrim in this barren land. I want to welcome everyone to Higher Definition Radio. I want to thank you for joining and watching us. Like I told Don earlier, don't pay me any attention. People get to know me, they know, I'm just moving in my own lane in this world. and I don't want to derail our show, but Don said something important in that clip, that just because you have these DEI programs doesn't mean people are intentional or really mean it. And it is shown over the course of this last year, how quickly a lot of companies dropped their programs with just the threat of anything. That tells me you weren't serious about it anyway. You were doing it just to do it, because it sounded good. We're in different times and interesting times. So I want to welcome everyone to Higher Definition Radio as we talk about the Generational Wealth Show. But I need to first see how everyone is doing this week, especially Pastor Ed. He's sitting back there like he's a truck driver. Pastor Ed, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. God is good. We're happy. I'm blessed to be here with all these superstars. So I don't know how y'all found room for me, but I'll take it.
Oh my goodness. Come on, Pastor Ed. Come on. Pastor Ed, tell us the church you pastor and where it's located.
It's Faith Connections Ministry in Fort Mill, across from Baxter, where the Lowe's is. We're right over there in the cut.
Thank you for what you do in the ministry. Thank you for what you do in the community. Mr. Davis, how are you, sir? You looking sharp tonight? How are you?
I'm okay, sir. Had a pretty good week. Glad to be, back on the show with this esteemed panel of people tonight. So looking forward to some educational things that I can take away. I know, Don, Candace, and Lamont, me and Ed are just lowly servants here. So we're looking to learn how to get all this money like y'all have, and we'll kind of glean from you tonight. But I will say this, Lamont, we had the grandbabies all summer, right? So mom coming to get them tomorrow. So they've been with us since May. So God is good.
And speaking of the person, if I can just touch the hem of her garment, Don Johnson, how are you, man?
I am great. I just got back in the country Friday night, so I'm getting my internal clock back acclimated to U.S. Eastern Standard Time, but I am good.
See, all this money, just got back in the country. I've been in the country. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got to reset nothing.
Same here.
And last but not least, Candace, how are you, ma'am? And how are you been so far?
I've been doing pretty good. Enjoying conversation tonight. Enjoying, just everybody feeling really good. I actually got some rest, so I'm feeling amazing tonight. Took a little
after the flight too, Candace. You just got off the plane too?
Oh, not yet.
Okay,
Look,
just making sure.
Catch me next year.
Or maybe you got a flight right after the show, like Lamont. I don't know.
Oh, stunting! He's like, you hating?
That's all right, Marlon. You and I are gonna go hang out in Rock Hill or do something.
Yeah, do something. Lamont's gonna tell y'all his story tonight of how his uncle was able to give him a small loan of $2 million. Looking forward to hearing that.
Before I turn it over to Candace, because she has that beautiful bow on tonight that looks like money, so she got the right topic on. Want to shout out Everett Abel and his wife. Happy anniversary today. Happy anniversary to my dad today. I mean, happy birthday to my dad today.
Happy birthday, Pops.
Happy birthday. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Best dressed Pops in the building.
Well, I mean, somebody got to do it. I mean, my dad got to do it. He just got to do it. I mean,
he be coordinating. I give him that. Mushroom vest with the, he be doing it.
That sound like hate right there, Marlon. That sound like hate. With this, I'm going to turn this over to Candace as we get into our generational wealth topic.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Candace Moffitt, the minister and therapist. And you may ask, what is a therapist? Why do you want to talk about generational wealth? And the reason is because I see the stress. I see clients that come in and they are stressed out. Matter of fact, I have a stat for you. The American Psychological Association say that money is the top cause for stress in Americans. 72% of adults have stress at some point in their lives from money issues. And so tonight, I really want to talk about how do we go from debt, being overwhelmed, being stressed out, to financial literacy, going into generational wealth. How do we even get there? How do we get to a place where we can take the trips, where we can not worry about money, where we can have discretionary income. Only reason I know these words from Ms. Dawn taking her classes. But I really believe that we have to have the conversation. We have to get started. The biggest thing is that debt is scary to look at, right? Debt is an ugly monster that nobody wants to look at. And so I really want us to go higher tonight, higher definition into how do we build generational wealth. I want to talk a little bit about the guests tonight. We have, of course, Ms. Dawn Johnson. She has built the 8 steps of financial empowerment. She's had classes, she's written the books, and so I really am excited about what she has to offer tonight. We have Pastor Ed. You are a financial mortgage underwriter, so you see all the things behind the scenes that like red flags and different things that people may not think of. And so I'm grateful that you're on tonight with us. And then Marlon, I know you feel like, hey, why am I here? But listen, I love, how you are building generational wealth for your family. You also have, been in the group. And so seeing how that singing group, how did you guys, split money? Were there contracts in place? What kinds of things happen? And so tonight, I just want to first start with the first question. What does generational wealth look like to you personally? Like, what does that look like? Is that being on a plane? Is that making sure that your kids are set up for their future? What does generational wealth look like?
Well, I'll start off. Generational wealth to me looks like the type of wealth that you have that you can't even get rid of, right? You have a lot of people in life that are rich. Rich can go over in the summer, right? But generational wealth to me looks like, things that investments, real estate, things that you can pass on from generation to generation. And hopefully, once you pass it on, you're able to give those tools to your children, your family members, whoever you entrust in that, to be able to continue to keep that going. Because we can talk about the ugly side of it, right, too. And I'm pretty sure Dawn, and being in finance, and Ed as well, where you probably see things passed on and someone maybe didn't handle it the way they should, and maybe dropped the ball of something that someone worked so hard for their whole life. But in a short synopsis, for me, it's the type of money that you just can't give away. It's there. It's you have that investment there. It's going to continue to give you a return, unless, like you said, you pass it to an individual that just completely messes it up. But I feel like that's generational wealth. Yeah, long term and ongoing. Thank you, Ms. Prince.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll say, just from the scripture standpoint, before Ed jumps in with this, in Proverbs, it tells us a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and a sinner leaves nothing. And we see it so many times, and I'm disturbed. I got a friend that does not believe in life insurance, and I keep telling him, well, you're gonna die. I mean, that is for sure. So why leave someone in peril? And then you grow up, especially us as African Americans, we see the perils of not having insurance, at least to put you into the ground. You finna have a whole bunch of people fussing and fighting and kicking and screaming before you even in the ground about getting you in the ground. I just think that's a poor mentality, and a mentality that hurts us as people. On the other side, I have a lot of non-Black friends who most of their wealth comes from life insurance, and parents and paid something off, and it stays in the family generation. I stay across from a farm that's been in their family for 4 generations. Generational wealth.
Exactly. And just to piggyback from that real quick, Lamont, and I'm in the same industry as Dawn, so I'm a manager. I'm in insurance as well, work for ACG. And I think, Lamont, you talked real quickly about the amount of people that aren't willing to have life insurance, because even when we have conversations with members, and I know Dawn probably know about this, trying to penetrate, right, other products, you're talking to them about, life, auto, home, health, all that good stuff, right? Trying to talk to some people about life, a lot of times they want to avoid that topic, right? They don't want to talk about death because it's morbid, Lamont. So I've experienced that, but you have to talk to them to say, hey, this is real. Like you said, something can happen. And I think reality check was COVID. That's what we saw, our company, I can't speak for Dawn, but that's what we saw, an increase, right? in those things, because a lot of family members saw that they weren't prepared. And then the other one thing that we would get was, well, I have life insurance on my job. Oh, yeah, okay. So what if happened? What if something happens to your job? What is plan B? So rebuttals, overcoming those objections as well. But I think that's a great point that you made, Lamont. If you invest properly and you get the correct life insurance and you educated on those things, you can use those as well to create wealth and not leave your loved ones in a bad predicament if something were to happen.
Not enough everyone to jump in there. Here you go.
I'll go before you because I know you got much more than I got. So my thing is generational wealth is knowledge, right? The problem is it doesn't matter what you pass along if the next generation cannot use what's passed along to do anything. That's why wealth stops. And I am a underwriting director, so we talk about like how the 3 P's in mortgages, right? Policemen, physicians, pastors. They're the 3 toughest loans. They usually have the worst credit, believe it or not. So you would think of a physician, bad credit, right? Because you don't have to really manage your credit. When you have a lot of disposable income, some of these folks feel like it manages itself. So it has to be taught because we get in bad habits, and we as a people, right? We're used to cashing our checks on Thursday or cashing our checks on Friday, and then we carry around cash. We think that it's a flex to carry around cash, but wealthy people don't have cash. They're not carrying around cash. Their money sits in a bank. So you have to get people to understand wealthy people actually use credit. People say don't have any credit. No, wealthy people don't use cash. Their cash makes more money than using that credit does. So you just have to know, but those are things we don't know because we're not educated in those things. So when people like Sister Dawn comes on here and she's going to get us to see things in a different way because we just have to be able to transfer it. We like to hoard stuff and then die with it, right? And GoFundMe has become the new life insurance, right? Everybody, it's a GoFundMe page, right? Help us. We got to get this money together in the next 3 minutes because we got to bury so and so. So I just think it's really communicating. We don't sit at the dinner table. We're too busy teaching the Cupid shuffle. We're teaching the electric slide. We're teaching the Tamiya shuffle. We're teaching boots on the ground. But we need to be teaching folks how to get in the books and understand what compound interest is and understand how we're getting further and further behind with more education than we've ever had. We're still going to be behind because we're still not tapping into mathematics. Mathematics is a universal thing. It doesn't matter what your culture is. Works the same for everybody. We just got to learn it and teach it.
I hear you, Pastor Ed. Instead of where them fans at, where that life insurance at? I like it.
That's right.
I love it. Y'all know my head is just going in a million directions based on everything you all just said. But my earliest remembrance of my mother, and I talk about my mother a lot because that was my foundation in terms of I was so fascinated with the fact that this woman who had I'll say grade school education. I only use reference 8th grade because she went to school when school was in a house, and all the kids on the neighboring farms went to this house to be educated, and they were educated by one person, and they just moved you up based on you passing certain lessons. So when I look at her educational level and my dad, I know he didn't probably get even as far as she did beyond the 3rd grade. But I looked at the fact that she was able to purchase a home, and that she was the person that everyone went to when they were in trouble financially and needed something. And I know she didn't have much. So I just, when that song, Chitty Chitty, knows it, How You Make a Dollar Out of 15 Cents. Y'all heard that? I mean, that was her. And I just, always thought about how she navigated. Even, in my life, it's not that I've always gotten it right. I've made lots of mistakes, but I always went back to. So to me, generational wealth are the lessons. My mother wasn't able to leave a lot financially, but she left some great lessons for me to build upon. So I think part of generational wealth, and I think Ed, you hit on this, is knowledge. It is about the lessons that you learn and you teach and you model. She models the behavior, and for us to follow. And we had, we could follow it or not, but we always had it to come back to when we did make our own mistakes. So I would say initially it is the knowledge. I think sometimes people think, oh, they're tuning out when you hear the word generational wealth because they think that they don't have anything to leave. But you can't, how I tell people legacy is how you live and how you leave.
Mm.
So how you manage money, whether you have a little or a lot, you're leaving a legacy. You're leaving a generational habit to your children that can then turn into wealth. You, even if you don't leave them tangible assets, you can leave them the knowledge that they can use to build tangible assets. And we all have the opportunity to take it to another level. And I feel like, my parents did what they could do based on what they had, and then I was able to build on that, making my own mistakes, but using what they taught as a foundation. And now my daughter, at first you don't think, you see her getting the nails done and the lashes, like, oh Lord, I done failed. But when she figures it out, and I'm like, okay, this is how much money you have to budget for the whole semester. This is what's in this CD, and it has to pay your tuition. It has to pay your room and board. You have to eat off of this. Figure it out. And so to watch her navigate and figure out, okay, maybe I don't need the nails, maybe I don't need the lashes because I want to take a trip and go this place or that place. So to know, sometimes again, she watching model behavior and then being left to make informed decisions on her own after being given responsibility in a safe space before she is out in the world on her own. She's in college right now. So I think those are the things that, to me, are more about the generational wealth, is more about the knowledge and the model behavior and the habits that then lead to wealth. Because wealth is health. When you model good eating habits and good health regimens, that also can lend to, the next generation, your children, not having to spend the money on, doctor visits and medicine that cost lots of money, that even the reduction of expenses and debt can help them build wealth. So I want people to begin to expand their mind in terms of not just thinking about physically, tangibly, do I have the investments? Do I have the real estate? Yes, those are definitely things you want to make happen. But even if before then, let's think at a more basic level in terms of the habits, in terms of how do we reduce expenses? How do we cut off the lights? And, let's look at this utility bill every month and what control do we have over it? And looking at budgets and going through every line item on the budget and saying, what do we have control over and what can we manage a little more effectively? So those are some of the beginning foundations to me, when it comes to building generational wealth.
And Candace, before you go to the next thing, let me say this for the people that believe in the power of prayer. Please pray for Pastor Gene Hunt and his family, who I saw pop in. He had a horrific loss where 5 of his family members passed away in a tragic car accident. He's been a regular contributor, not only to our platform online, but when we were at WRHI. And my heart goes out to you, Pastor Gene Hunt, for what you and your family must be going through, with 5 of your family members passing away so tragically. And I saw your name pop up, and I wanted to acknowledge it the same way I acknowledge it at my own church today for our church to pray for you. So the people who believe in the power of prayer, please pray for Pastor Gene Hunt, his wife and their family, who had a horrific loss that none of us are prepared for. 5 members of your family died once. So we are praying for you, Pastor Gene Hunt, and we thank you for what you've done and contributed to Higher Definition Radio.
I think you're getting a little bit of feedback too, Lamont.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead, Candace.
Okay, yes, definitely praying for you, Pastor Gene. And so I know that basically you guys already touched on this, Pastor Ed and Marlon touched on, how our focus is in the wrong place. So my question is, do you believe that families today, especially in the Black and Brown communities, are being set up for generational wealth. We have, like you said, the GoFundMe's, we have the dances down pat, but none of the financial literacy down pat. But we see Miss Dawn trailblazing and having classes and different things like that. But my question is to you guys, what are your ideas or what do you think should be the next steps so that we can create financial literacy and that we're not setting up GoFundMe's and people are getting life insurance and things like that? What do you guys think could be the next step to that?
I think it's like Dawn stated. I think everything tonight is going to come back to me to education, right? Dawn put a great perspective on it. Even I wasn't even thinking that way. Just being able to leave knowledge, right, to the next generation. And for me, I think the problem we have a lot of times too, Candace, and I did this, I'm young, I got time, what I'm saying? I can have fun. It is what it is right now. I got all of this time to get it together, right? But, we should be teaching our children, as young as we can, spending habits. What is credit? Y'all be surprised at the amount of children, and my kids themselves, didn't even know you go to a hospital, it's not free, right? And that's where, I dropped the ball because, I think as parents, a lot of times, we want to protect our children so much from the mistakes that we've had. Sometimes we shelter them so much we hurt them, right? To where they're not educated on these things. Even having some of these things in school, right? To be able to share, even a show like this, Candace, right? Think about it, depending on tonight, you may not get a lot of views talking about, generational wealth, right? But if we did a show on, baby daddy ain't, getting cussing his mom out every 5 minutes, or you can see somebody jump on live and just start going off about anything, right? 200, 300 views. So it's not an exciting topic for some people unless they're really serious about, making sure that they're secure in their future. But again, to me, it just comes back to knowledge, to education. Do you understand what it takes to build that first and foremost? And how intentional are you going to be in making sure that you're well educated and that your family members are educated to be able to continue to keep that going? Because once again, if without knowledge, it doesn't mean anything if you can leave someone all these assets and they don't know what to do with it once something happens with you. So again, I'll circle back, Candace. It has to be that knowledge, that education, which I think is lacking for Black and brown. We've went to seminars before, and Dawn, I don't know if you experienced this, but we'll see not a lot of people look like us, what I'm saying, in those seminars, trying to make sure that they're straight, but we'll pack it out for a trail ride, right? It's to me, again, at the end of the day, it's going to be priorities. And secondly, before I wrap up, I want to say too, I think that social media alone has created bad habits, right, for a lot of us. And people going on trips they can't afford, right? I think Dawn talked about, who literally to this day goes through a ledger of all their spendings each month to see exactly what went where, right? That takes work. A lot of people aren't willing to do that work, but it's worth the work. So again, educating yourself, where's your money going? How is it going? And what's coming in, what's going out, right? You'd be surprised the amount of people that, are, getting hit with all of these late fees every 2 weeks, and it's taking up most of their check when the check deposit. So it's just so many bad habits. But again, it still is going to circle back to education to me.
I guess I think the same thing. I think early literacy is everything. Like I was forced to read when I was 3, 4 years old, right? And my mom would make me read books. And as I got older, it was adult books, right? So I'm 8 or 9 reading books, and it was just get a dictionary and read this book. If you don't know the words, look it up. So what it forces you to do is be literate, and literacy adds to education immensely, right? So by the time I go to school, I already know what's being taught, right? So early on, you already know. And what that does is now I have daughters, I got a daughter with a master's, I got a daughter getting ready to go to college, right? So each generation should have a higher expectation than the one that passed, right? I graduated from college, but for my daughters, my expectation is they're going to get their PhD, right? Because that's going to be a game changer for them. But we also got to teach, like we said, I live in Fort Mill. We always talk about Paradise community as a disparaging thing, but they have more home ownership than almost anybody in Fort Mill. So when you talk about, most of us are house poor. We talk about generational wealth and net worth. Most of us don't own our houses. Sister Dawn can tell you, when you get an insurance policy, if it says Wells Fargo, guess who owns that house? It's not you. If something happens, Wells Fargo owns that house.
Yeah, good old lien holder.
Yeah, the lien holder owns most of what we own. So we say that's mine. No, it's not. So that person that has a house might be 200 years old. Who cares? It's theirs. You know where most of Fort Mill's wealth is? It's time. And that's where wealth gives you more time, because we all have 23 hours and 56 minutes a day. But honestly, those with wealth use that 23 hours and 56 minutes better because they have more resources. And that's, to me, the number one generational wealth item is time, right? So we've got to teach people to value their time more. We've got to teach them, what are they using their time for? Does your time make you better, or is your time just something, right? And I think we as a people, we do it. We'll spend time shooting. We'll spend time dribbling the basketball. We'll spend time dancing. We'll spend time acting, because we've always been entertainers. But what about education? When we talk about brown people, there's even a disconnect, because not all brown people are struggling. If our Indian brothers and sisters are not struggling financially, if you look at the average in education, you look at the average wages, they are not struggling. But we as a people, as African Americans, from my shade up, are struggling, right? And it's not that we have less intelligence, it's less exposure, right? So the exposure is something that we've got to start doing. And those who raise up, instead of hoarding our positions, we've got to start teaching other people how we got there, instead of trying to hoard it and let it be the secret sauce. There shouldn't be any secret sauce. We have to elevate others and mentor others. But it starts with a one-on-one conversations in the house. Talk about stuff that matters, and stop making your kids go in another room. Sit them down and talk to them at the dinner table about this stuff. You got to have these conversations. If you don't know it, we got to call Dawn. We got to call Candace. We got to call people that do. Call one of us. We'll help with it. But we as a people have got to stop blaming everybody else for stuff that we have access to. We just have to get the right people and listen to the right people.
Pastor Ed trying to stun on us. He gave us a 23 hours and 56 minutes. He's trying to stun on us with his knowledge.
Oh.
So, but I thought about that as you're saying it. Like, to me, yeah, it makes sense, because that's why we have leap year, to straighten the time back out. But that, to your point of even saying that, knowledge is key, right? Like, without that knowledge, someone out here is going to quote 24 hours, and they're dead wrong. That might be what your clock say, but that's not the real time. The same way, from a knowledge standpoint, that we're acting like we don't know why the housing market is messed up right now. It's a simple answer. People got interest rates at 2 and 3%. Most people are not going to jump to an 8% mortgage rate. It just wouldn't logically make sense. You can blame the president of this, president of that, but it's human logic that no one is going to jump out there and buy all these homes at 8% or 7%. It wouldn't logically make sense. So understanding how housing markets work, how interest works, how your credit score works, you can tank your credit score very easily, and it'll be very hard to recover from. And you talking about, Don, with a budget, try missing a couple payments and see where your interest rate goes, how bad that would be. So Pastor Ed, thank you for even, saying the 23 hours, because it also goes to knowledge and making sure that we understand what's going on in this world.
Good stuff.
Dawn, you can jump in.
Sure. Actually, so I think, and I tell someone has to be that person. Like, do y'all all have that person in your family where you go, oh, there they go? Or are you that person? It's okay every family has to have that person that's going to always come to the cookout, to the Sunday dinner, and say, by the way, are y'all on point with this? Are y'all on point with that? Everybody got their life insurance? Like, start the conversation. And I've offered to people, when people say, oh, no one would listen to me. Oh, this is such great information. I would love for my family to have it. I tell them, invite me to the cookout. I'll talk about it. If you don't want to be the one to do it, I will. That's how passionate I am about getting this information out, because I couldn't understand, to your someone, I think Pastor Edry said about hoarding information, that when I found out that there were people who had this knowledge, why they weren't sharing it. I'm like, how did you get it and why are you sharing it with other people? Um, so I do think, to your point, I don't know if it's a matter of people think that others won't hear them or want to hear them, or they're going to roll their eyes when they start talking. What is that? What is holding us back from sharing the information that we have and the successes that we have? Do we think that it's because we're going to be showboating or bragging? I don't understand that part, because the information, my parents taught me what they could, but they didn't work in corporate America. So there were certain things they couldn't teach. And my mother she put money away, but her way of saving money, my mother was born in 1929. So she was a depression person. She grew up during the depression. So she didn't believe in banks. She actually would put money under the mattress. We knew there was money in a certain drawer. We knew there was money in a coat pocket in the back of the closet. That's how she was squirreling money away for the various things that she wanted to accomplish. And the only time that she realized, when she needed a bank was when she needed to make purchase a house. But I took that concept of putting money away, and that's how I learned how to do, laddering CDs. But I had to learn about putting money in the bank and learning about interest rates once I started in corporate America and sat in the break room with a bunch of people who didn't look like me, and they were willing to have the conversation and share the information. I didn't learn it from anyone who looked like me. And that's unfortunate. So I don't know what it's going to take for us to feel more confident, more open in sharing and helping people manage. Because I always talk about this concept of reaching back. Like, I'm always looking for people, anyone who's reaching out and wants information, I'm always going to try to be available. And then I'm always trying to reach out to people who I think are doing similar things, because iron sharpens iron. But I'm also trying to look up to find the people who are doing things that I want to do, but I don't necessarily know how to do, and say, hey, are you willing to teach me? Or can I just, be in your space, in your presence, so I can see what you do and how you do it so that I can learn. And I just think that's a philosophy that we have to develop, is how do we get the information and get around the people. One of the lessons that my mother did teach was she said, if there's anything that you don't know how to do, you find the people who are doing it, you just hang around them. They don't have to invite you in or take you under their wing or anything like that. Just be around them, be in the places that they are, and try to absorb and learn as much as you can. So to your point, I think we're all saying very similar things, is that we have to find a way to get the information, but we also need to be open to sharing. And I'm willing to sit and talk with anybody who can. I mean, I've been trying the 20 years that I've been in this community. I literally feel like I've been at every church that, back when I came in 2006, 2007, I was, anybody who would invite me to their church, I would go and sit in and volunteer to give information, to have the classes. But I'm willing to talk through what it will look like. I have done the workshops, I have done the community meetups. The numbers are few who show up and show up consistently. I mean, it's just the honest facts, and I don't know what else to do about it.
Can I add one thing, Candace? Because Pastor Ed brought up a good point. This forward information, as the veteran that's on this panel, military benefits, it is one of the things that people hoard like it's some top secret. We have so many loved ones, especially in the African American community, that serve this country proudly. There's so many benefits that are owed to you, but for some reason, people just never know about them. And it's a difference of setting you up with a peaceful life versus struggling to get basic health care. So I do want to say, if you're a veteran, please share information. There's a lot of veteran resources out there.
Awesome, awesome. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for the comments, Miss Janet. I'm gonna get right to you. I see you have a lot of great comments about mortgage payments and home ownership. But before we go there, I want us to get into budgeting. I have a scenario for you guys. So, like I told you before the show, like didn't know how bad a payday loan was, and literally felt like I was couldn't breathe or coming up for air, because like every time you get the loan, you need the money, right? But then as soon as you start paying it back, your interest rate is out of this world, and you're really never going to pay it back until you just pay back the loan and the fee, because the interest rate keeps you behind. And so my question to you all, and maybe starting with Pastor Ed, what if somebody, like for example, somebody might have just said, okay, I need to go get my kids some shoes and clothes. They don't have to, but their mentality is that, hey, I need to let my kids look great, and I might need to go get this payday loan. Instead of thinking differently about it, mindset, right? How does that person begin to get out of that kind of debt, when you are suffocating in maybe credit card debt or payday loans?
So the Bible says that every man must count the cost, right? So before we make anytime I tell my kids, anytime you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. Financially, you have to. If you're someone who takes a lot of trips, something else is going to give, whether it be your bills, whether it be I spend a lot of money eating out. So if that's my thing, but I don't get new shoes, I don't wear new clothes, I don't have a new car, my house is paid for. Well, it doesn't really matter, right? I just think we as a people have to count the costs. And the problem with a payday loan is we're essentially telling someone, I'll pay you 3 times as much not to wait, right? That's all a credit card is. A credit card is saying, I want now what I can't afford now. And I'm willing to pay you double and triple how much it's worth because I want it right now. But we've got to ask ourselves, what do we need right now? And what is something that we forego for now, right, to get where we want to go in the future? And I think that that's a conversation when we're used to cashing our checks and we're used to doing the things we do. Do y'all realize, like, even a 30-day mortgage, a 30-year mortgage loan, right? It's you can pay it off in 15, you can pay it off in 10. You just have to be disciplined. You can do these things. VA, brother Lamont said it. Veterans get 100%. They're eligible for a 100% financing. It's the only loan 100% financing for qualified veterans. It's the best deal around. The debt to income ratios are higher than any other program. You will make it work for a veteran. I know these things, but veterans don't know. So what Brother Lamont was saying is true and not true. So interest rates do not stop purchases as much as they stop refinances. People are going to buy a new home because rents are astronomical. What you're paying in rent right now is like a mortgage payment. The key is most of us have no money we've put away, because as soon as the new iPhone comes out, as soon as the new Jordans come out, we pay off a phone, and we feel like once we pay off a phone, we got to upgrade. For what? Rich people drive a car until the wheels fall off. But every time we get something, we're like, oh, I'm about paid off. I got to get a new one. What do you got to do? I don't want to spend $3,000 to get it fixed. So you'd rather spend $30,000 of car payment plus interest. So we've got to count the cost. A 30-year note, you're going to triple so a $200,000 mortgage is $600,000 30 years later. So you think about how many of us think, oh, mortgages make money. They don't make money if they last 30 years. You will lose money on a mortgage too. So when people say, oh, it's an investment in the future, not over 30 years, you will lose money. The banks will win, right? So we got to understand the system is set up for us to lose. For the rich to stay rich, most people have to lose. That's the way it works, just like Vegas. Most people have to lose for you to fly into that desert and gamble, right? And we've got to understand that's the way money works. We've got to count the costs on the front end and ask ourselves, was that thing really worth it? Did we need the $100 phone when the $20 phone was working fine? You know, and stop trying to prove that you're richer than you are, because only the middle class try to act rich. They're the ones driving the Bentleys, not the rich people. It's the people trying to pretend they're rich. Just my humble opinion.
No, and I think we, as a culture, have to continue to educate each other, not to make foolish decisions. You can't let payday loan facilities pop up in only Black neighborhoods. Like there was a statistic done a few years back, and most of them were in low-income Black neighborhoods. Why? Where you have just as good of a shot getting a small loan from your local credit union, your local bank. But we got to educate ourselves to that. We got to educate ourselves to have our finances in order to do the things we need to do, not that we want to do. So thank you for that, Pastor Ed.
Can I just add one last thing and I'll shut up? But Cadillacs, right? So do y'all realize if you study the history of Cadillacs that it was a bankrupt company that we saved as a people?
Oh yeah.
It was a bankrupt company that they convinced us had value. Now everybody, it's a flex to own a Cadillac. The Cadillac was sold to us, just like pawn shops, just like payday loans. It was marketed to us. So we just have to be careful of what we're chasing, right? We're chasing things that we can't bring along. We're chasing depreciating assets like a car, right? Where we think that having something that the minute we drive it off a lot means something when we've already lost 10% of the value before it even gets home, and then there are things we can invest in like life insurance. My goodness, like it's making money while you sleep.
Yeah, but we'll line up for some Jordans, at the mall, right? Because you got to have the latest Jordans. And I think what you talked about, Kansas, as far as even with, you talk about the payday loans, like Lamont stated, the location of those, check cashing centers, liquor stores, right? As a people, we are targeted like that. I was telling my wife the other day when I passed by, it's like for someone like me, I was like, who's still walking in a place cashing a check? But a lot of people do that, right? So I was like, I'm judging, and I know I was wrong for that, but I couldn't fathom it because I'm like, I have a bank account. Why am I pulling up? That was some young stuff I used to do when I worked at Winn-Dixie way back in the day, and cashing a check, right, was just odd to me. But those payday loans, like a lot of people stated in the comments, definitely were a setup to failure, right? Even going to college, right? Them giving them credit cards. I'm probably gonna date myself here, but you remember you could put in the ATM, you can put in an amount to say it was deposited and get the money that same day, right? A setup. Y'all know that was a setup, right? And not being and talk about credit cards as well. On top of payday loans, again, Candace, it comes back to education, right? Because you just talked about your experience with that, and I'm pretty sure if you kind of looked at that that percentage, right, that APR, the finance rate, you probably would have thought twice, right? But you don't think about that because at the time you needed the money, and I think a lot of times too, it's that peer pressure, particularly on parents, to where now you have your children, that are going to school, going back to school, right? You have all these other children, the parents that are literally living above their means. So little Johnny can go and wear the latest Jordans and have on all this stuff just so someone can say, oh, look at those shoes. And mama and daddy, I'm not just going to blame mamas. Mama and daddy has run themselves into debt just to make sure little Johnny go to school and everybody ooh and ah at that. But then you up late at night wondering how I'm going to take care of these other bills because I've lived above my means to do so. And on top of that, you could have had a payday loan on top of that, right? To help to get additional money. Because most time when people get payday money is where they probably pretty much substantially spent their reserves, right? So now they need a little additional, and now you have to pay that back plus interest. And like you said, Candace, you can't really win until you pay it all off. And most time it keeps you in a merry-go-round, right? And it's truly a setup. But I think again, it comes down, and I think someone put in the chat, discipline, right? And we lack a lot of discipline, including myself. I'm doing much better with that. But a lot of times you do have to ask yourself, we go this, oh, I work hard, I deserve it. But some things, you don't have to jump into, just because you work hard. And I think what happens too, when me and my wife was talking, we were like, the type of money we made 20 years ago and how we were able to still survive off of that versus what you have now. But what we do in life, right? You get more, you accumulate more. So it's almost as like you're not moving anywhere if you're not smart with your finances. And not saying that you shouldn't have nice things in life, but it's certain things that you can just say no to. And literally, Ed, you sparked something in my head as well, even with eating out, right? There are apps out there that do all the work for you, and I'm pretty sure y'all familiar with this. And I did that with a Bank of America and just show how much I was spending just buying out food out to eat per month. It was astounding. But you don't think about $10 here, $8 here, $7 there, $17 here, how that adds up over the month, right? And what could I have been doing with that money, setting that to the side, or investing that in other things that could make money for me while I was asleep versus making these other corporations richer, right? Because again, like you said, Pastor Ed, the house always wins, right? But we have to find a way to make sure that we're not playing into the house's hands.
That's good stuff. Miss Dawn, what are your thoughts?
I was just about to say, I think what we also don't understand is when you factor in the fees that you pay on everything. I mean, just look at your cable bill. There's taxes in there, there are fees. I mean, they say, okay, yes, you pay $29.99 for something. But then by the time they add in the fees and the taxes, you're almost paying twice as much. So I don't think that we realize how much it costs to really have things. And that delayed gratification, I don't know that we even practice that anymore. Everything is instant gratification. We see it, we want it. And that's what, I mean, why do you think that these companies spend so much money to advertise during Super Bowl? Because they spend that money to market to you because they know that you are, into instant gratification. I talk about a little what I used to do with my daughter when she was little, and I want this, I want that, and I would just tell her, put it on the list and keep it moving. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to have a debate with you. I'm not explaining anything. I would just tell her, put it on the list. But before the end of the day, where's the list? I mean, she's forgotten about the thing. So it's just when things flash before our eyes, and we're watching whatever, and now you're watching TV or watching whatever on your phones, and those ads are just popping up. It almost feels like literally that they know what you're thinking, because as soon as you think something, the ad pops up literally on your phone. So we just have to really understand that game, that psychological game that's being played, to the point where we can't even keep all the stuff in our homes. I mean, if you were to go into most people's homes, things are just we spend more money on bin. I did have someone that gave me an epiphany. I went into Lowe's and I was and I was trying to describe to him the type of bin that I wanted and that I couldn't find. And he said, well, would it be easier to just kind of get rid of the clothes? And, at first I was a little upset, but then when I walked away, I said, he has a point. So I just think that we do have to stop sometimes and really do assessments. Just walk through your house and think about, do I need all of these things? The reason why I made it a point, there was a person that I was in a space with. And like I said, I always try to learn from other people. And this person is, someone of financial means, doesn't look like me. And he talked about going on a sabbatical once a year. We takes a month and just goes away and unplugs, resets, and decides what he needs to do for the rest of the year. And I thought, that's a good idea. Like sometimes we just need to unplug. So first it started a matter of, okay, no, I couldn't go anywhere for an entire month, but it became a goal, something I wanted to work towards. So I started just unplugging for a month. Like I'm going to unplug from the things that to try to make sure I understood that I don't have to have instant information. People don't have to have instant access to me. And I needed to practice a month of just unplugging, not buying anything and doing the least. If you would let yourself practice that, you can start to learn a little bit about minimalism and maybe, decluttering, getting rid of some things. And when you take time to do an assessment of all that you have, appreciate, have gratitude, be thankful, and then think about moving forward, do you really need all of these things? and you just give yourself time to think about these things and not cut on the television, cut off social media, and not let yourself be bombarded with all the information, you would be amazed how you can then shift your mindset. So I went from 2018 to getting to this point of being disciplined and practicing doing the least, to get to the point where I could go on an official sabbatical and unplug. And what I learned in European countries, things are so much smaller. They have small closets, they have small cars, they have smaller everything. And they look at Americans as that we do things in excess, that everything has to be big and overdone. So I think sometimes just seeing how other people live and how other cultures live can also help you shift your mindset, because we're just looking around us in our own environment and we're repeating the things that similar people are doing, and we're not stepping outside of our norm to see something different in order to have us do something differently. So you can start, I get other people may not be able to go to those places, but guess what? We can go around the world through our phone. We can start to engage with other cultures. I mean, it started off with me with just reading books. That's how I traveled, by reading books and going to far, far away places by reading a book. So I just think that we have to do something. To your point, all of these habits that we have. If you watch, I don't know if should be mentioning this, but I don't know how many people watched the movie Django. Do y'all remember that movie?
You
There was,
about to get right up my alley now. I'm about
Oh
to
yeah.
chill out now.
but do you remember that scene where as soon he was wearing a burlap, potato sack, that's what they wore right off the plantation. And when he had the opportunity to go into a closet and pick something out, he picked the fanciest, most colorful outfit you could imagine. So you think about culturally, that's what we have done. We, have been denied some things. We've seen others wear certain things and look a certain way. And as soon as we had the opportunity to get some money in our hand, we wanted to look like them, we wanted to be like them, and that has become our mindset, and it really hasn't changed. So I think we have to, and that's why part of the book in 8 steps, I ask people to take a moment and think about why you do what you do. Where did you get that thought process from? How did it evolve? Is it serving you now? Because if we don't take the time to dissect and think through why we practice certain behaviors, and I'm stepping into your space, Candace, then we won't be able to break these generational habits that are causing us to behave and do the things that we're doing.
I want to thank everyone for watching Higher Definition Radio so far, and thank you for your contributions. And for the people who acknowledging that I'm on great behavior, one is my dad's birthday, and I know my mom and dad are watching. That's one. Two, I don't want to throw Candace off. She ain't quite used to my antics at times, and it would just throw her off. I talked about the white usher shoes before we got started, rest assured. I talked about, if you want to boycott union because we're switching to black usher uniforms. I talked about all of this. But third, and most important, this is a real serious conversation about money. And I'm telling you, it can really haunt you if you're not careful. And I'm sure all of us individually have our individual testimonies like, man, I messed up right here. And it took me 7 years, 10 years to dig out. And sometimes I ain't dug out, that I'm paying for things I did in the past. So I wanted to keep it as serious as possible. But you better believe I'm on my job about these white usher students. Go ahead, Candace.
Listen, and Lamont knows I'm offering him counseling sessions all the time, and I'm always asking him to think about what you're saying. So I'm sure he's tired of me too. So we balance each other out. But thank you so much, you guys. This has been huge. This has been a wealth of knowledge. Like the mindset. I know Marlon talked about Bath and Body Works. I got to a point where I'm like, why am I in here? It's baited to make you want all the scents, so that you can have a whole bunch of Bath and Body Works on your dresser and you can't find anything because you got so much Bath and Body Works. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I love, Miss Dawn, how you talk about bringing ourselves to unplug so that we can study our behavior, so that we can see what are we really doing. Because I remember during the pandemic, I had a Amazon addiction. I know we can all attest to that. And I started to say, man, like, why? What? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you said, instant gratification. You get the item, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I'm not as excited anymore. Just like, my daughter Belle, get her a toy. In one less than 1 week, she's not playing with it anymore. So at the end of the day, like, we have to really do those evaluations. And as we continue to wrap up the show, I had some specific questions for Miss Dawn and Pastor Ed. So Miss Dawn, when you come to your 8 empowerment, I know we get some feedback. I think 8 steps of financial empowerment. I think about the first step being budgeting, right? And really getting that budget. And that can be overwhelming at first when you look at, hey, I'm spending so much money on food and different things like that. But what do you see the most? What have been patterns that you've seen with those 8 steps that have helped people?
Yeah. So I think the very first thing is that I recognize that most people don't know how much money they have coming in and how much money they have going out. They're really just, they have like this ballpark figure in their head of how much money they have, and then they're just paying bills and they're doing it all in their head. And I'm like, put it on paper. Let's look at it on a piece of paper. And 9 times out of 10, first I will tell them in the very first session, I will say, let's just I just start asking them questions and filling out a budget sheet and say, tell me how much you pay for this, how much you pay for that, how much you, and they're telling me off of their head, out of their head. And I'm like, that's how you manage your money. So this is what, based on you managing your money out of your head, how much money you have left over the end of the month. So then they say, I said, so is this number accurate? And they're usually like, no, I don't have that much money left over at the end of the month. Well, I'm like, based on what you just told me by brain dumping, that's how much money psychologically you think you have. So I need you to go home and pull out your bank statement and fill out these, because one section says proposed, and that's from your brain, and the other section says actual. So I need you to put in the actual amounts based on your bank statement. And when they do, that number is going to be black if you have money left over, if you do it electronically, and it's going to be red if you don't. And 9 times out of 10, there's a big gap between what they thought they had and what they actually have. So then the journey becomes, how do we close this gap? And if the number is black, do you need it to be more in order to accomplish your goals? In terms of, what are your top 3 goals? Retirement, buying a house, and saving money for your kids for college, whatever those goals are. So that's usually where we start. And that's the number one challenge, is that most people don't have a number. Like, you should be able to say, this is how much money I have coming in, know that number, how much money is going out, and this is my discretionary income. Those are 3 numbers you should know instantly. And then when those numbers are off, the first 3 places that I go to work on that discretionary income number is eating out. That's the very first place that you can go to find. And if people do things like, some tips, and are like shopping, when you go grocery shopping, just going around the peripheral of the grocery store and not going up and down the aisles. There's nothing good for you up and down the aisles. It's all salt, sodium, sugar, stuff that's going to break your heart and put you in an early grave. So if you just chop the peripheral, which is going to be your fruits and your vegetables, your milk and your bread and your meats, if you eat meat, those are really all the things that you need. And so if you start there and then start doing meal prep, practice going to a grocery store at a certain amount of time, giving yourself a budget on how much you're going to spend. And I know people, I get that life is busy, but we have to take the time to do the things that are most important to us. And if you can't make time to nourish yourself properly, and you're going to hand your life, your physical being, the only thing that you own on this earth is your body, and you want to hand it off to others in the food industry. So my mother used to do this thing because she cooked 3 meals a day and she did not like us eating out at restaurants. And she used to go like this and go like this. And she said, that's what those people back there are doing, meaning they're rubbing their noses and running their hands through your hair and cooking your food. So she used to turn our stomachs to get us to not want to eat out. But, I don't want to, I know there are great restaurants out there and there are great people out there who make great food. But we just want to be conscientious about how much we're eating out and making sure that we have more control over what's going on in our bodies. So not only are you going to save money on your health by not having medications and maybe going to the doctor as often, but also managing your pocketbooks. Evaluating your cell phone bills, evaluating that, I don't know if people have internet and cable bills anymore, but the number of streaming services, I think people lose track. They were supposed to save money by not having cable, but now they have all these streaming services and they can't keep track of how many they have. So those are just some of the loose areas that if you go line by line based on that bank statement, that you can begin to set some goals to to do some things differently. I mean, we got to the point in our household, we had the bouncing Netflix bill because I was like, first it was the cable bill. I'm like, well, I don't watch cable, so I'm not paying that bill. So then my husband was like, well, I'm not paying it. My daughter was like, well, I'm not paying it. So I was like, okay, then we get rid of it. I mean, it's just comes down to really starting to have those conversations. So now it became the bouncing Netflix bill. And it's like, well, who's using Netflix? And my husband's like, I don't do Netflix. So I was like, I do Netflix. But I was like, I'm willing to shift to YouTube. So I don't want to do Netflix. So now there's no Netflix bill. I mean, so really just having those conversations in your family to really assess what are you using, and is it that important to that you're willing to own it and pay for it out of your own money, out of your own spending money. So those are the things that I encourage people to start doing, and having financial dates as a family to assess your bills quarterly and really make assessments based on your goals. I always talk about begin with the end in mind. What is the number one goal that you might be trying to accomplish this year? Keep that goal in front of you. And then when you go through your budget, you always analyze keeping something or letting go of something for that particular goal. And I understand that sometimes things can be a season. Maybe you just do the least for a year until you accomplish that goal. And then you decide what those things that you put off or decided not to do, you work back in your budget once you accomplish the goal. Maybe that can be your reward. So those are just some of the tips that I initially start off with when I'm helping people navigate a budget.
Candace, can I ask Marlon a question? I know you got Pastor Ed and I know we got to wrap. Marlon was a part of a national singing group, and I wanted to get this in because he probably saw this from a different perspective coming out of high school, trying to work and manage within other young men also. Can you talk about any of the pitfalls or the highs of not only contract management, but just what you saw when it came to money in a singing group? And for the people who don't know, Marlon was a part of Phase, and I'll put the name in the group so you can go to sleep and spend the night. Their chart-topping song. But go ahead, Marlon.
Yeah, I would say, again, you're going to hear me repeat this again tonight, education, right? You're talking about someone that was in college at the time, moved to D.C., was singing anywhere to try to get a singing career. Long story short, ended up being signed with Maverick Records, and 21 years old, getting a signing bonus, 5 members in a group. And at that age, you're getting 50 grand to live off of, whatever you're supposed to do, right? In your head at that time, you're thinking, because you don't know the business, right? So it comes back to education, right? You're thinking, okay, we're gonna sing, we're gonna blow up. This is no money, right? So I can just blow this or do whatever I want to do with it, because after this song release, it's over. We there, right? And you don't think of you don't think of the market, you don't think of the competition, you don't think if the label is managing you correctly, right? You don't think about the living expenses and the tours and things like that you got to pay back for before you even start making money. So a lot of people, and y'all seen this happen too, right? To some of the way larger groups in an Phase, that had all of those hits and had no money, right? So just to piggyback on what you're saying, Lamont, a lot of the pitfalls was a lot of artists worry more about the show than the business. And the biggest thing you want to have in order, and I've learned as I gotten older, I'd rather understand the business side, and I don't have to be on TV. I don't need to be on the stage. If I understand the business side and I'm able to make the money that I deserve for doing that as an artist, that's what I want, that education. But the opposite of it is people get so caught up in the show part of it to where they get messed over in the business part. So I would say anyone that's stepping out or wanting to get into the music industry, educate yourselves. Don't just sign contracts. Have someone look over that. Yes, do a lot of artists take a hit up front to eventually be able to renegotiate? Yes, that happens in sports. That happens everywhere, right? But again, and I told you, Candace, keep saying this. Education word is knowledge word, right? When you talk about, and Lamont used to always have this question in our interviews, what would you tell your 18 and your 21-year-old self? At this age was, going into it, I would have balanced more of, my needs versus my wants. And what I would say my needs would have been at that time is, hey, invest in equipment, invest in a studio as a group, because y'all have all this money together. Now you don't have to pay anyone to go into their studio. Now y'all have a studio as a group, and you can charge other people, and that's generational wealth, right? Because that's something that we can continue to manage and move forward with, that we were able to come together on. I think the mentality is, and a lot of times that we get caught up in as brown people is, we don't stick together as much as other races do in a lot of cases, right? So it's more so, I got mine, you get yours. Or I don't want to do anything with this other group because I want to be able to manage and tell everything, and I want to be the head of this, but sometimes, of course, you have to follow before you lead, right? But I will say again, Lamont, with that experience, man, what it did teach me is again, to understand the business, before you jump into the show.
Man, that was great information. Thank you, Marlon, for sharing, that previous experience. I think if we can, I know it seems to be like a gap between wise and young people, right? That, the young people, the wise people are like, hey, the young people don't want to listen to me. But, I think we can learn a lot of things like, hey, when I was your age, I would have done this or I would have done that, and saying it in a non-judgmental way to say, hey, like, you don't need a $900 truck payment. That's, I mean, that's literally like you're paying rent or something. So I think, if we could just have those open conversations about, hey, like, I know for me growing up, I know the biggest thing for me was hearing like the wise say that I made a mistake. And because I made a mistake, this is how it set me back, but I was able to learn from that. And I don't want you to do the same thing. So I think if we can share our mistakes and things, that we can offer some wisdom to the younger generation. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate
it. And just real quick to piggyback on that too, Candace, what I thought at that age when I was younger, right? I thought that success meant that everybody had to know me, that I needed to be in the limelight, that I needed to be on TV, right? Because you were young, you were exposed to that. So you got to think, you going from city to city, touring with R. Kelly and things like that, people on your autograph limos, and having to come back home and get a 9 to 5 because it didn't work like you thought it would work. So in my head, I thought that you had to be out in the front and do things like that to be successful. But as I matured as an adult, I find that I am successful now. And I don't have to be on TV. Everybody doesn't have to know my name, but I've learned a lot from that experience. And of course, memory wise, and to have that, no one can ever take that away. But again, if you could go back, and I'm pretty sure all of us probably ran through this in our heads, right? Man, if I could change this fork in the road when I was this particular age, right? I think all of us have that conversation. This is what I would do. But I learned a lot from that, to know that success doesn't mean that I have to be in the limelight.
So definition of success, and just that mindset change and shift. So that was powerful. So as we come to a close, Pastor Ed, Miss Janet has been sharing a lot of nuggets and tools about mortgages and things like that. As a real estate agent, my mom has shared with me some tips and tools on mortgage payments. But Pastor Ed, I would like to hear from you on what you've seen patterns in the mortgage rates, and then To Miss Janet's point, like, is it possible to pay your mortgage off with a few extra payments?
Yeah, so just wanna echo Marlon real quick too. Would you rather be Bobby Brown right now or Michael Bivins? I'd rather be Michael Bivins right now. You
Exactly.
know, and would you rather be Stephen A. Smith or would you rather be some of these athletes? Because I'm gonna tell you, his $10 million a year or 20 million, whatever ridiculous amount of money he's making, there's longevity in that. He's 5 foot nothing. I'm his height. I
And
can do
his
that.
stats were garbage.
Yeah. So why are we selling our kids to be NBA athletes all the time and then selling them be a sports center guy like you? He's getting paid to have an opinion, right or wrong. So when we talk about mortgage rates, right? We just have to understand if you make one extra payment a year, it cuts years off. If you make two payments a month instead of once a month, it cuts money off, right? If you get a 30-year note and you just pay extra on it every month, you know, it just depends, right? So it depends. I'm not disciplined enough. So me, I have a 15-year rate because I won't do it every month. I will pay the 30 some months. This forces me and keeps me honest. But if you have it right, you should always get a 30-year and then pay it off in 15. You should just pay extra towards it. And you got to remind yourself that means not going to McDonald's. Maybe that means not getting a Starbucks coffee. Maybe you can just get coffee at the house, you know, and finding activities that are healthy, that are free. So when we get stressed, that's when we spend money. We spend it on food, we spend it on alcohol, we spend it on drugs, we spend it on cigarettes, right? So if we've got to find other stress releases that don't cost money, and I think that will help with the interest because the more money we can put down on that house, because most people, let's be real, most people are going to die with a mortgage. If you do it wrong because they're flipping them so many times and they're refinancing so many times, you'll never own that house. The math won't work out. But if you're disciplined and say, look, yeah, we can go to Myrtle Beach a second time, but let's just go one time and let's use the money on the second time and put it in the fund, right? Put it in the fund for emergencies, right? And just leave it there. And then we say, hey, I'm going to put 200 extra dollars on this mortgage every time instead of tipping someone when you go and pick your food up. How about that? Use that money and put it into something. I'll give y'all one last secret. When people tell you to invest, like, hey, would you like to invest $5 in St. Jude's? Guess what they're doing? They're writing off money you could write off. You can invest in St. Jude's and it's a tax write-off for you, or you can give them a money and it's tax write-off for them. They don't care nothing about St. Jude's. It's just tax-free. It's a write-off for them that you're paying for. So we just have to understand how our money works, understand that the people with 850 credit scores actually are not the ones with the least debt. It's the ones that use their credit a lot. Because you come to a certain point, if you pay off all your debt, your score will go down. If you have zero balances on everything, your credit score is not its highest. You have to use all that credit and then pay it off every month. And that's where the discipline for most of us doesn't come in. So yes, we can pay them off early just by one extra payment a year, one extra payment every other month. Start thinking about what you're wasting your money on. Did you sit with the car running? Maybe that's $2 of gas, right? Just the things that we do, the stupid things we do with our money, and then wonder why we don't have any because we're giving it away to other folks. Why are you tipping someone to go pick your food up? What are you tipping them to do? Pick your food up and go home. Why are you paying for DoorDash when you live down the street? Come on, go get your own food if you have to eat out. Better yet, just find something in the house. And the time it takes them to come with your cold food, you could eat your own food. Sorry for those of y'all that are on DoorDash. But just those kind of things, right? The no's now are going to be yeses later. There's no such thing as retirement. There's no such thing as retirement loans later. You can't you when you are 65, you're not going to have any income. How are you going to make income at that point if you're not working anymore? Now you've got debt. So you've got to find ways to use your money before it uses you.
Phew, this has been a powerful conversation. So, just some takeaways. If you had a one sentence, a 2 sentence takeaway, let's kind of close with that.
Well, I'll step up before the experts speak. But I would say, I think, again, intentionality, right? A lot of this we talk about. Yeah, a lot of times we'll say we want to have the knowledge, we want to know. We'll go to Don's workshops, maybe speak with Ed on those things. And Don is probably, and Ed's probably experienced this as well. People, you're getting with them, you're giving them the education, you're giving them the knowledge, but are you applying it? And I think that's the difference, right? Because a lot of things we say we want to do, but are we truly serious and are we truly intentional about it? So those are the things that I kind of took away from the show tonight, Candace, is really intentionality, because all of this information that we spoke on tonight, Dawn, Lamont, Pastor Ed, you as well, Candace, it means a hill of beans if you don't take something from this and start applying it to your life.
I guess I go next. Just make sure you're teaching your kids. Like, talk to them about the budget in your house. I know we're this old school, the parents never told me what was going on because we're children. That's foolish, because what you're doing is setting them up for failure because they have no clue. Teach them what money is. Teach them what this means. Teach them what the Fed rate means. Teach them what interest rates going up and down means. And if you don't know, find someone outside of your circle. We spend too much time with people like us. It's like a 500-pound person asking a 400-pound person, how are we going to lose weight? They don't know either. So we've got to change our circles and find people where we're, if you go where everyone goes, you're going to end up where everyone is.
No, and I think this has been a powerful show, powerful conversation. I would say our discipline shows, right? Whether you're the church leader, the church janitor, whether you work in a warehouse, it shows in our life and our lifestyles one way or the other. Please be smart and take heed to pitfalls you saw other people make. Don't trip into the same ones. I think too many of us follow the same mistakes someone has made before us, and we can do better than that. So learn from each other's mistakes. And Pastor Ed summarized something I say all the time is my own mantra. If you're the smartest person in your circle of friends, it's time to get a new circle of friends. And I really, truly believe that. Thank you, Candace, for putting this together.
And I think that's easier said than done, Lamont, because some people want to stay the smartest person in their circle, right? So that does prevent growth, in my opinion, because that mindset, right? We say that, and that's great advice. But how many people are willing to not be that smartest person, right? To not know everything, and to be able to glean from someone that can allow you to, get further in life with some of these things. Again, piggybacking on what Pastor Ed said, please, anyone with children, it's never too early to educate them on these things, the credit, how to spend their money. Start early with them. Again, it's not that old school mentality where, they don't need to know this right now. They need to know it, because if they don't learn it from you, they're going to learn it from the streets. And if they learn it from the streets, depending on who they're around, they're going to build some habits and hobbies that, could hurt them later on in life, to where they don't understand how these things work. So again, it's going to come back to that education, making sure your family is well educated, and again, being intentional with that education.
And I just have some really quick tips that I try to leave people with. If you're just trying to go through a season of just trying to maximize your discretionary income, and it's funny because my pastor did a sermon today and he talked about baking soda and Googled all the things that you can do with baking soda. So I challenge people to do that. If you Google baking soda, apple cider vinegar, coconut oil, and lemons, just Google those four things and all the things that they can do, and utilize those things in every way that they can perform in your household. And you can probably cut your bills by 25% if you do that for a period of time. uh, Pastor Gordon hit on fun free, make it fun. Like I try to make these things fun and I make them challenging so it don't feel like a heavy burden. So, challenge each other to find the free events. There are festivals all over South and North Carolina. Find the free festivals to go to. Try to gather and have fun together for free. do potlucks versus going out to the club and to the other thing, and just gather at each other's houses and rotate and everybody brings something. Review your bills with your kids and help them understand how these bills are generated and their role in it. Reach back, reach out, and reach up. In terms of how you give, it's good to give. An open hand to give is an open hand that receives. So give back and give of your knowledge, your time, your talent, your resources. Reach out, iron sharpen iron. Hang with people who are in a similar space with you that can keep you lifted, keep you encouraged, keep you strong, and reach up, as you all have said, to learn from people who have been where in other places that you haven't been, that you can learn from.
Awesome, awesome. This has been great. I have two statements I want to read to you all. You don't need to be rich to build wealth. You just need to be consistent and strategic to build the wealth. That's what I've learned from you guys. Healing financially is possible and is spiritual too. God desires us to be good stewards over what we're given. So having those tough conversations with ourselves and others to know that, hey, like, we can do this, we can change how things are going, change how we see our money, change our lives through changing how we manage our money. So I thank you all for being on tonight. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the guests who tuned in. And I'm ready to continue reading Miss Dawn's book. I've been working through it with my budget and stuff. It's like you come to a place in your life where you want to change. You want to see something different. You want to be able to travel. You want to be able to do things. So that means saying no to Amazon, DoorDash, and all the other things so that you can have the life that you want. All right, I'm going to close off. Mr. Lamont, you have anything else?
No, thank you again. Thank you for the people that's watched, the people who've commented. We appreciate it. Please continue to pray for Pastor Gene Hunt and his family. Continue to support Higher Definition. If you've sought us for your first time, please like and share it. We try to put out good content, good information, and we try to do a lot in the community. I think that's the most important thing about reaching out. And, we're not everyone's cup of tea, but we've been doing this for 18 years now. So I am proud of that, proud of the legacy that we've left with that, and so many connections we've made. Pastor Ed is on, and I'm hoping he can connect with Candace, connect with Don, connect with Marlon, and the other people who watch the show. Maybe his church is not their cup of tea, but maybe he is as a person that can share resources. So Don has said it a couple of times, with iron sharpen iron. And I really believe that for the people that are kingdom minded and kingdom building. So thank you, everyone, for joining and watching us. And with that, I'll say be blessed. Have a great week, everyone. Tell someone you love them. Be careful. This weather is a little tricky right now. When it's 100 degrees, now it's 70 and raining. Be careful out in this weather. So be blessed, everyone.